They say love is the purest reflection of the soul. But what happens when the soul awakens before love arrives? When your eyes open wider than the hearts around you, love doesn't disappear. It just becomes harder to recognize. When a person begins to awaken spiritually, something profound begins to dissolve, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. It is not the world that changes, but the way you see it. The patterns that once made sense begin to fall apart, and you start realizing that most of what you called love was not love at all. It was dependency, familiarity, and fear wearing the perfume of affection. You begin to see that what you once called connection was often a transaction, and what you mistook for intimacy was sometimes just the comfort of being needed. And so you pull away, not because you've stopped loving, but because you've begun to understand what love truly is. There comes a point where your heart refuses to feed on illusion. You can no longer participate in half-truths or build relationships out of fragments of honesty. Awakening strips you naked before your own soul, and in that nakedness you realize how much of your life was built on roles: the good lover, the loyal partner, the rescuer, the pleaser. But when you wake up, those roles no longer fit. They suffocate the truth trying to emerge within you, and though others may not understand it, you are no longer willing to abandon yourself just to be loved. Awakening changes what you desire. You stop craving intensity and start seeking peace. You stop chasing people who make your heart race and instead long for those who make your spirit rest. You no longer want someone who completes you, because you've tasted the wholeness that comes from within. And yet, this transformation is not easy. It brings a quiet grief, a mourning for the old ways of loving that once felt so alive. You realize you can't go back to who you were before awareness arrived. You've seen too much, felt too deeply, and understood too clearly. The illusions that once comforted you now feel heavy in your hands. And this clarity, as beautiful as it is, also isolates you. The more you see, the less you can pretend. You start noticing the ways people hide behind words, how they use affection as currency, how they perform love to be validated rather than to truly connect. And you begin to wonder, how do you love in a world that still sleeps? How do you open your heart without drowning in what others have yet to face within themselves? It becomes a delicate dance. One step toward connection, one step back toward solitude. Clarity has a cost. To see deeply is to lose the comfort of illusion. You look at someone's smile and feel the sadness they're hiding behind it. You hear their laughter and sense the fear woven through it. You notice the way people say, "I love you," but mean, "Don't leave me." And though you understand it with compassion, you cannot unsee it. You cannot unknow the truth that love, as most people practice it, is often a plea for safety rather than a celebration of freedom. And so, the more awake you become, the fewer people you can truly call home. But this awareness is not a curse. It is an invitation to love differently, to love without possession, without expectation, without control, to love as the sky loves the sun, giving space for its brilliance without needing to hold it. It's a gentler kind of love, but it demands a strength few understand, because to love like this, you must first be whole on your own. You must face your shadows, sit with your loneliness, and stop expecting others to fix the wounds you haven't tended yourself. Your energy shifts as you awaken, and this shift changes everything. You begin to vibrate at a frequency that feels foreign to those still bound by fear. Your peace feels distant to them. Your silence feels unsettling. They can't read you anymore, because you're no longer reacting in predictable ways. You no longer chase validation, no longer argue to be understood, no longer beg to be chosen. You become still. And that stillness, that quiet power, confuses the world that thrives on chaos. In this new space, love can no longer be dramatic. It must be aligned. You find yourself drawn not to the loudest energy, but to the most authentic one, to the eyes that see rather than the lips that flatter, to the souls that feel rather than the minds that analyze. Your heart no longer leaps at attention. It listens. It listens for resonance, for the silent hum that says, "This one moves at the same rhythm as I do." That is what connection becomes, not excitement, but alignment, not fantasy, but truth. But truth, as freeing as it is, can be lonely, because not many people live there. You start realizing that you cannot meet someone halfway when they have never begun the journey inward. You can only meet them where they are, and sometimes that place is too far from where your spirit now lives. Yet, even in this distance, you learn to love with compassion rather than attachment. You no longer judge those who aren't awake. You simply understand that every soul blooms at its own time, and your role is not to awaken them, but to remain awake yourself. This is where the struggle lies for the spiritually awake, in the longing to share love in a world not yet ready to receive it. You ache for someone who sees the way you see, who feels the way you feel, who understands that love is not a possession, but a presence. But until that soul crosses your path, you learn to find beauty in solitude, peace in stillness, and connection in the sacred conversation between your heart and the universe. It is in this quiet, in this in-between, that a new understanding of love is born, one that does not depend on another's awareness, but flows from your own. You begin to love everything. The moonlight through your window, the sound of your own breath, the rhythm of your steps upon the earth. You realize that love is not something to find, but something to be. And from that being, you will one day meet another who loves in the same way, not with hunger, but with presence. Until then, you walk gently through the world, no longer chasing, no longer clinging, just observing, feeling, expanding. Because the awakened heart knows love is not missing. It's simply waiting for you at a deeper level of existence, one that few ever reach, but once touched, changes everything forever. When you reach a certain depth in your journey, love is no longer a fleeting thrill or a passing comfort. It becomes sacred, something that demands your full awareness. You no longer look for connection merely through shared interests or common ground, but through the stillness between two souls who can exist together without fear. You begin to crave the kind of love that feels like home, not the kind that burns for attention or validation. You want to sit beside someone and breathe, not to fill the silence, but to honor it. Because when you've spent enough time healing yourself, you realize that true connection is not found in the noise of excitement, but in the quiet rhythm of peace. There's a heaviness that comes with this kind of awakening. You begin to realize how shallow most connections have been, how often love was mistaken for distraction, and how easily passion was used to mask the absence of real depth. You remember the times you tried to mold yourself into the version of love someone else wanted. You remember the moments when you silenced your truth just to keep someone close. But once your consciousness expands, you can no longer dim your own light to stay in someone else's shadow. It's not pride, it's alignment. You understand now that real love cannot breathe in the presence of pretense. So you start to redefine what connection means. You stop looking for people who make your heart race and start seeking those who help your soul rest. You start noticing who listens when you speak, who holds space without judgment, who is unafraid of your silence. You begin to crave depth, not drama, honesty, not performance. And when you start living from that space, the world around you grows quieter. People drift away, conversations fade, and what remains are those who can meet you in your stillness. But this depth has its own weight, because love for those who are awake is no longer simple. It's no longer about merging, it's about mirroring. You don't want to lose yourself in another person. You want to meet someone who reminds you of yourself. You don't want to be completed. You want to be expanded. And this kind of connection demands maturity, courage, and surrender. It asks you to look at your wounds not as weaknesses, but as the sacred ground upon which love can grow. You see, before awakening, love often feels like possession. You meet someone and think, they are mine. But after awakening, love feels more like presence. You meet someone and think, they are free, and I am free. Yet we choose to walk together. That is the essence of conscious connection. It doesn't chain you, it liberates you. It doesn't suffocate, it breathes with you. You learn that love is not about holding tighter. It's about holding wiser. And sometimes it's about holding without holding at all. The illusions of compatibility begin to crumble too. You realize that being compatible used to mean sharing preferences, favorite foods, similar routines, aligned ambitions, but now you understand that compatibility has nothing to do with lifestyle and everything to do with energy. Two souls can appear perfectly matched on paper, yet feel worlds apart in silence. Another can appear completely different, yet when they sit beside you, everything inside you settles. That's resonance. A harmony that no algorithm can define. When you start living from awareness, compatibility becomes less about sameness and more about balance. It's no longer, do we like the same things? It's, can we honor each other's differences without fear? It's, can I rest in your presence without performing? You seek someone who values truth over comfort, reflection over reaction, patience over pressure. You stop chasing perfection because you've learned that perfection is just another illusion. Real love isn't flawless, it's fearless. It allows imperfection to exist without shame and vulnerability to stand without apology. And yet, the deeper your understanding becomes, the more cautious you grow. Not out of fear of love, but out of reverence for it. You've worked too hard to find your peace, too long to build your wholeness, and you're no longer willing to sacrifice either for a fleeting connection. You've learned that love that costs you your authenticity is too expensive, so you guard your energy, not because you are closed, but because you are discerning. You protect your peace the way a garden protects its soil, not against love, but against weeds that choke its growth. This caution, however, can be misunderstood. People might say you've become guarded, distant, even cold. But what they cannot see is that you've simply become aware of your own value. You no longer pour endlessly into those who refuse to fill their own cups. You no longer chase those who run, nor beg those who ignore your worth. Your boundaries are not walls, they are gates that open for the right energy. And behind those gates lives a heart that loves deeply, but now loves wisely. Yet even with all this awareness, there are moments of loneliness. You will miss the simplicity of love before you woke up. When you could fall easily, without thought, without fear, you'll miss the intoxication of infatuation, even if it once hurt you. But you'll also see that what you miss isn't the person, it's the innocence. It's the version of yourself who hadn't yet learned the cost of mistaking attachment for love. And that nostalgia, though painful, is also healing, because it shows you how much you've grown. As you navigate this new terrain, you'll sometimes question yourself. You'll wonder if you've become too careful, too discerning, too detached. But detachment is not the absence of love. It's the refinement of it. It's the ability to love without clinging, to care without controlling, to give without losing yourself. It's knowing that your peace is sacred and that no relationship, no matter how passionate, is worth your soul's silence. This level of awareness brings freedom, but freedom can feel lonely when the world still confuses chaos with love. You'll look around and see people mistaking attention for affection, validation for connection, lust for intimacy. And you'll want to reach out and tell them there's more than this chasing, this begging, this endless cycle of almost. But you'll realize that awakening cannot be forced upon anyone. Each soul must come to that truth in its own time, often through its own heartbreak. So you stop trying to convince, you stop trying to teach, you simply live, quietly, peacefully, truthfully. And in doing so, your energy begins to speak louder than your words. It attracts what aligns and repels what doesn't. You stop searching for love and start embodying it. And that embodiment becomes your protection, your magnet, your guide. From this space, love transforms again. It becomes a practice, an art of being fully present without needing to control the outcome. You begin to see that love is not about forever, but about now. It's about how consciously you can hold the moment, how deeply you can see another without judgment, how fully you can allow them to be themselves without trying to fix them. You realize that the purpose of love is not to find your half. It's to remember that you were never broken. And in this remembering, something miraculous happens. You no longer fear losing love, because you no longer see it as something outside yourself. You carry it in your presence, in the calmness of your gaze, in the way you move through the world with grace and groundedness. You no longer beg for love to stay. You become the space where love feels safe to dwell. That's when love returns, quietly, effortlessly, not with fireworks, but with stillness. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists like breath. And in its simplicity, it teaches you one final truth, that love was never gone. It was just waiting for you to rise high enough in awareness to meet it where it has always been, beyond fear, beyond control, beyond delusion. So now, when you love differently. You love with eyes wide open and a heart that no longer fears its own depth. You love not to be chosen, but to express the truth of who you are. You love without needing to possess, without needing to prove. You love from abundance, not from absence. Because after awakening, love is no longer something you find. It becomes something you are. And when you embody that truth, when you live from that fullness, the right soul will find you. Not because you are seeking, but because your very being became the frequency of love itself. There is a quiet ache that comes with awakening, a kind of loneliness that is hard to explain. You begin to look around and realize that most people are still living asleep, moving through patterns of distraction and attachment. They crave noise because silence confronts them with themselves. They crave attention because it feels like proof that they exist. And so when you move differently, when you no longer seek what they seek, they don't understand you. Your calm unsettles them. Your peace exposes their unrest. They call you distant, detached, mysterious. But in truth, you are simply awake. It's not that your heart has grown cold. It's that your soul has grown wise. You have learned to distinguish between connection and clinging, between affection and need. You have seen what love becomes when it is used as a mask for emptiness, how people grasp at others to fill the void within. And because you've done that work, because you've faced your own emptiness, you can no longer pretend that kind of love satisfies you. You need something real, something alive, something that speaks the language of your soul, not just the language of your wounds. You begin to realize how rare it is to find someone who has met themselves deeply. Most are still running from their reflection, numbing through busyness, performing through perfection, hiding behind roles. But when you've walked through the fires of awareness, small talk becomes unbearable, and surface-level affection feels hollow. You no longer want to build a bond out of convenience or chemistry alone. You want to build something that breathes, something that grows with you, stretches with you, challenges and awakens you. And until that kind of love appears, you find yourself walking alone, not in bitterness, but in truth. But there's a beauty in that solitude. It's a refining space, a sacred waiting room between who you were and who you're becoming. In that silence, you begin to hear yourself again. You learn to sit with your own company, to taste your own presence, to fill your own voids. You start to see that solitude is not emptiness, it's wholeness in disguise. It's the universe's way of teaching you that love cannot complete you. It can only accompany you once you are already complete. Still, there are moments when the silence feels heavy. You may look at others, laughing, holding hands, building lives, and wonder, why not me? But the answer always returns softly, because your soul demands truth, because you've seen too deeply to pretend, because your heart now knows that half love will hurt more than loneliness ever could. This is the price of awakening, to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. But it is also the gift, because in seeing clearly, you stop chasing illusions. You stop begging for crumbs. You stop confusing pain for passion and control for care. You begin to love from a higher space, one that no longer needs validation to feel whole. And yet, in that higher space, a paradox emerges. The more detached you become, the more misunderstood you are. People assume detachment means apathy, that your calm means indifference. But true detachment isn't about not feeling. It's about feeling everything without letting it consume you. It's about holding love with open hands, allowing it to flow through you without the urge to possess or control. It's about giving freely and walking away peacefully when the energy no longer flows both ways. This is where many struggle, because the world teaches us that love must come with ownership. That if you truly care, you must cling. That if you truly love, you must never let go. But awakening teaches a different lesson. It shows you that love is not proven through possession, but through presence. You can love someone deeply and still release them when it's time. You can care with your entire being and still choose yourself when staying means self-betrayal. Love, in its purest form, is not a chain, it's a current. It moves, it breathes, it evolves. And when it's real, it doesn't need to be forced. So you learn to love with open hands. You learn to say, I love you, but I will not lose myself for you. You learn to let people walk their paths without trying to shape them to fit your vision. You learn to love without the hunger of needing to be loved back. It's not a lack of passion, it's a mastery of it. It's not a lack of care. It's care purified of fear. And though the world may not understand this kind of love, your spirit does. Because deep down, you know that anything rooted in fear cannot be sacred. As this awareness deepens, your heart begins to soften again. You realize that awakening doesn't mean building walls, it means building doors with discernment. You start to see that the goal was never to stop feeling, but to feel consciously, to love with awareness, to give without self-erasure. You stop labeling your solitude as loneliness and start honoring it as preparation. You understand that love will return, but when it does, it will meet you at your level of peace, not your level of pain. This journey teaches you that healing doesn't mean perfection. You do not need to be fully healed to love, because healing is not an endpoint. It's a rhythm. Some days you'll feel whole, other days you'll feel cracked open. But you no longer fear your cracks, because you know they let the light through. You stop judging yourself for not being ready for love, and start trusting that love will meet you in whatever space you're in, as long as you meet it with truth. And that truth, above all else, is what you've come to value most. You've learned that truth is the foundation of all real love. Without it, connection collapses into illusion. With it, even distance can feel sacred. You would rather walk alone in honesty than together in pretense. You would rather sit in silence than speak words that mean nothing. You would rather wait years for alignment than spend another day in emotional confusion. That's not pride, it's evolution. It's the soul's refusal to settle for less than authenticity. So you begin to turn your focus inward. You stop asking, when will I find love? And start asking, how can I become love? You begin to practice loving yourself with the same devotion you once gave to others. You tend to your inner garden. You forgive yourself for your past, and you cultivate peace in the spaces where chaos once ruled. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you start to glow from within. That glow is not the excitement of being desired. It's the radiance of being whole. People will start to notice. Some will be drawn to it. Others will be unsettled by it. Because your energy no longer vibrates on the frequency of desperation. It vibrates on the frequency of authenticity. You no longer attract those who feed on your emptiness. You attract those who are nourished by your peace. Love, once a distant dream, begins to circle back toward you, not because you chased it, but because you became it. In the end, you realize that your solitude was never a punishment. It was your initiation. It was the divine way of cleansing your perception, preparing your heart for a love that mirrors your awareness. You see now that love was never meant to complete you, but to complement the completeness you've cultivated within. You understand that the universe was not withholding love from you. It was teaching you to hold love properly. And when that love arrives, and it will, it won't feel like the roller coaster you once mistook for connection. It will feel like peace. It will feel like home. It will not demand that you shrink, dim, or twist yourself to fit. It will see you entirely. Your depth, your light, your quiet. It will love you not because it needs to, but because it recognizes itself in you. Until that moment, your task is simple but sacred: to continue becoming, to continue loving yourself into wholeness, to continue honoring your solitude as a temple, not a tomb. Because in the silence of that temple, your heart is still learning how to love without fear. And that, my friend, is where true love will one day find you. There comes a moment when silence stops being a response to others and starts becoming a revelation of yourself. You begin to see that your silence is not emptiness, it's depth. It's not avoidance, it's understanding. It's not weakness, it's restraint. The noise around you may still demand reaction, but something sacred begins to shift within you. You no longer seek to be heard just to prove your existence. You no longer fight to be right just to protect your pride. You start realizing that the one who truly knows themselves does not need to defend who they are. Their energy speaks long before their words ever do. It is in this stillness that you begin to recognize how much of your life was spent chasing acknowledgement, trying to convince others to see your worth, your truth, your heart. But now, there's a soft rebellion rising within you. You are no longer begging to be understood. You are choosing to understand yourself. And this shift, this quiet turning inward, it changes everything. Because once you learn to find peace in your own presence, you stop being controlled by the absence or misunderstanding of others. There is a rare kind of peace that comes when you stop seeking closure from people who have already made up their minds. When you stop knocking on doors that no longer lead you to growth. When you stop reopening wounds just to show people how deeply they cut you. Healing is not about proving that you were hurt. It's about deciding that your future deserves more attention than your pain. It's about letting go of the need to be seen by those who never learned to look beyond their own reflection. And slowly, life begins to whisper, you don't owe anyone the explanation that steals your peace. You owe yourself the serenity that comes from walking away quietly, with grace, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. The silence that follows your decision to choose peace over chaos will echo louder than any argument you could have made. But there is something else, something deeper, that grows from that silence. You start to feel how life rearranges itself around your calm. You begin to notice how certain energies can no longer reach you because your vibration no longer entertains their noise. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. You are no longer trying to fix what was never yours to repair. You are simply choosing to remain whole, even when others choose to stay broken. In that stillness, forgiveness begins to take root. Not because the other person deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness is not about agreeing with what happened. It's about freeing yourself from being tied to it. It's about saying, I release you, not because you are right, but because I want to be free. And when that forgiveness settles into your spirit, you realize that peace is not something you chase. It's something you become. There's a sacred strength in becoming unshaken. The world may not understand your calm, and that's okay. People often mistake your quiet for indifference, your peace for passivity, your grace for surrender. But let them misunderstand, because your peace is not a performance, it's protection. It's the armor of the soul that has learned how to rise without bitterness, how to speak without venom, how to walk away without resentment. And in those quiet hours of solitude, you'll see it clearly. The people who once drained you were your greatest teachers. They showed you where your boundaries were too soft. They revealed how deeply you longed for connection, even at the expense of yourself. They taught you that love without respect is not love, it's dependency. They helped you discover the power of discernment, the ability to feel the energy behind words, the truth behind smiles, the intention behind kindness. With every lesson, your heart becomes wiser. You no longer open it recklessly. You no longer confuse attachment with affection. You no longer seek intensity where you once mistook it for intimacy. Instead, you begin to nurture the quiet spaces within yourself, the ones that don't need validation to feel alive. And there, in that silence, you find something extraordinary. You are enough. Not because someone says so, but because you finally believe it. That belief doesn't come overnight. It comes from the tears you didn't show, the prayers you whispered through trembling lips, the nights when you chose to stay silent instead of defending yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. It comes from the discipline of walking away when your ego begged you to stay and fight. It comes from realizing that your peace is not negotiable. It's sacred. And when you finally honor that peace, you start attracting different energies. The kind that don't compete, they complement. The kind that don't drain, they pour. The kind that don't demand, they understand. You begin to meet people who recognize your silence, not as distance, but as depth. People who can sit with you in stillness and feel more connection in a single glance than others could in 1,000 conversations. Because real connection doesn't need constant communication. It's felt through presence, through trust, through a mutual respect for each other's space. It's not loud. It's gentle. It doesn't shout, "Look at me." It simply says, "I'm here." And isn't that what the soul truly longs for? To be met, not just seen, but for filter. To be understood not through explanation, but through resonance. So, as you move through life, remember this: silence is not the absence of voice, it's the presence of understanding. It's the language of those who have made peace with who they are. It's the melody of a soul that no longer dances for approval, but moves with purpose. And perhaps the greatest realization of all is that peace does not come when life gets easier. It comes when you stop expecting others to change for your comfort. It comes when you stop trying to rearrange the storm and instead learn how to remain still within it. The winds may howl, the waters may rise, but you stand firm, rooted in the knowing that not every wave deserves your resistance. Some storms are not meant to be fought, they are meant to be observed. And when the noise finally fades, when the dust settles, you'll look back and realize that the silence you once feared became the sanctuary that rebuilt you. You'll understand that every unanswered message, every ignored attempt, every door that closed was simply life redirecting you toward yourself, toward wholeness, toward peace. The world will keep moving, people will come and go, but the soul that has found its stillness remains. It does not chase, it attracts. It does not fight, it flows. It does not shout, it radiates. That is the power of silence. That is the beauty of choosing peace over proving your point. And when you live from that space, your very existence becomes a quiet revolution, an unspoken declaration that you have outgrown the noise, that you have learned the sacred art of being calm in a world addicted to chaos, that your silence is not the end of a conversation, it is the beginning of transformation. There comes a sacred turning point in every soul's journey, a moment when you stop running toward what was never meant to catch you. You begin to see that peace was never waiting at the finish line of someone else's approval. It was always resting quietly inside the places you refused to visit because you feared what you might find there. But to walk the path of awakening, you must be brave enough to meet yourself, especially the parts you once buried beneath smiles and survival. In that encounter with your own truth, you realize how much energy you have given away to illusions, to the idea that love must be earned, that worth must be proven, that silence means defeat. You start to see how deeply conditioned you were to fight for what should have naturally flowed to you. And as you peel back the layers of performance, you find something both terrifying and liberating. The raw, unfiltered version of you that no longer seeks to impress, but to obey. This becoming is not loud, it's not dramatic, it doesn't demand recognition, it unfolds quietly, like dawn breaking through a long night of confusion. You begin to recognize the beauty in what you once called brokenness. You see how every crack was a doorway for light to enter, how every heartbreak was not a punishment, but a path toward expansion. It's a humbling realization that the things which once brought you to your knees were actually guiding you to stand taller, softer, wiser. You start walking differently. There's more grace in your steps, more patience in your pauses. You no longer rush the process of life because you trust that what is meant for you will not pass you by. You stop begging for clarity from those who thrive in confusion. You stop trying to convince people to value what they never learned to see. Instead, you invest that energy into nurturing the soil of your own becoming. Because now you understand what grows within you shapes what manifests around you. And as this awareness deepens, you begin to forgive. Not because the pain vanished, but because the burden of holding on became too heavy to carry. You start to realize that forgiveness is not about giving someone else peace. It's about reclaiming your own. It's about saying, you no longer have the power to disturb the waters within me. Forgiveness is a form of spiritual maturity. It's when you decide that your healing matters more than your history. But forgiveness is not always gentle. Sometimes it comes wrapped in grief. Sometimes it demands that you mourn the version of you that kept trying to make peace with chaos. It's not a single act, it's a process, a release, a quiet exhale of all the should-haves and what-ifs. And as you let go, you realize how much space opens inside your heart. Space for stillness, space for self-respect, space for love that doesn't require you to shrink in order to fit. And from that space of stillness, something miraculous begins to unfold. You learn the power of emotional neutrality. You no longer attach your peace to outcomes. You stop depending on external validation to feel whole. You learn that people's opinions of you are not mirrors. They're projections. You realize that your emotions, while valid, are not always truth. They are visitors that arrive to teach you, not to define you. This is where mastery begins, in the subtle art of observing without absorbing. When you can witness someone's chaos and not let it disturb your clarity, when you can listen without reacting, when you can feel deeply yet remain grounded, that is strength. The world will tell you that power is about dominance, control, or assertion, but true power is calm. It's the ability to stay centered while everything else spins in noise and distraction. And then, in the quiet that follows, you start noticing how differently life responds to that kind of energy. The right people begin to find you, not because you chased them, but because your peace became magnetic. Opportunities unfold, not from striving, but from alignment. You realize that life was never testing you. It was refining you, shaping you into the vessel that could hold what you once prayed for. You stop rushing toward tomorrow because you've finally made peace with today. You stop punishing yourself for the lessons that took longer to learn. You begin to speak to yourself with the gentleness you once reserved only for others. And in doing so, you awaken something ancient within you, a love that is not dependent on circumstance, but on consciousness. This love teaches you that you are not behind, you are not late, you are precisely where your soul needs to be. The delays were divine detours, the rejections were redirections, even your moments of loneliness were sacred. They were the silence needed for revelation to arrive. Because how else would you have heard the truth whispering beneath all the noise? And as you walk deeper into this awareness, your relationship with pain transforms. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start wondering, what is this teaching me? You no longer see pain as an enemy, but as an invitation to expand, to awaken, to rise. For the soul that has never been broken cannot truly understand compassion. The one who has never lost cannot truly value presence. The one who has never fallen cannot truly appreciate grace. So, you begin to thank the very storms that once terrified you. You honor the seasons of emptiness because they made you receptive to abundance. You see that nothing was wasted, not even the waiting. The waiting too was sacred. It was life preparing you for what your heart wasn't yet strong enough to hold. And now, as your spirit settles into this deep awareness, you begin to radiate a quiet strength, a kind that doesn't need to prove itself. You no longer engage in battles that threaten your inner stillness. You no longer explain your peace to those committed to misunderstanding it. You simply live from a place of truth, and that truth speaks for itself. What others see as detachment is actually discernment. What they call change is simply you returning to your original state of wholeness. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering who you've always been beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, beneath the fear. You are not evolving into something foreign. You are unfolding into yourself. And the beauty of this realization is that it never ends. The awakening is not a destination. It is an ongoing rhythm of release and remembrance. There will be moments when you forget, moments when you fall back into old patterns, but each time you return, you come back wiser, softer, more aware. That is the essence of growth, not perfection, but presence. To keep showing up, to keep choosing peace, even when chaos tempts you. To keep loving, even when love feels risky. To keep trusting, even when the path ahead is not yet visible. Because one day, you will look back and realize that the silence you once feared became the bridge between who you were and who you were meant to become. That the solitude you resisted became the sanctuary that restored your soul. That the peace you now protect so fiercely is not something you found, it's something you remembered. And that is the quiet truth that changes everything. Peace was never outside of you. It was waiting, patiently, tenderly, within you all along. There comes a time in your awakening when you stop trying to explain your evolution to those who haven't yet met their own reflection. You stop seeking validation from those still asleep in the comfort of illusion. You begin to understand that solitude was never meant to punish you. It was meant to prepare you. It was life's way of pulling you out of the noise, away from distraction, so you could finally hear the truth that was buried beneath all your pretending. And in that silence, something inside you begins to shift. You start to feel the weight of all the roles you've played. The people pleaser, the fixer, the savior, the one who smiled even when it hurt. You begin to realize how much of your love was poured into empty vessels, how much of your energy was spent trying to hold together what was never meant to stay. And though this realization stings, it also liberates. Because suddenly you understand that love is not proven through suffering. Love is not maintained through sacrifice that costs your soul its peace. The spiritually awake are not unloved. They are simply unable to settle for half-hearted connections. Their spirit rejects anything that feels counterfeit. They cannot unsee truth once it has been revealed. And so, while others chase chemistry, they crave connection. While others seek attention, they seek alignment. This is why their path often feels lonelier, not because they are unworthy of love, but because their heart no longer resonates with what once felt like home. They have tasted what authenticity feels like, and imitation can no longer satisfy them. You see, when the soul has expanded, it cannot return to its smaller shape. And this expansion changes everything. It changes how you love, how you listen, how you choose. It changes what you tolerate and what you let go of. It changes how you define closeness, not as physical proximity, but as energetic harmony. So many wonder why the awakened struggle to find love, but they do not see that these souls are walking a different rhythm. They do not date for distraction. They do not love for validation. They love as a spiritual practice, a sacred exchange of energy. And in a world addicted to instant gratification, their patience looks like detachment, their peace looks like disinterest, and their discernment looks like pride. But it is none of these things. It is simply clarity. When you reach a certain level of awareness, your spirit begins to filter what your emotions once freely accepted. You stop mistaking attention for affection. You stop confusing attraction for connection. You stop thinking that love should hurt to be real. You stop chasing potential and start honoring presence. The awakening teaches you that love is not supposed to drain you. It's supposed to ground you. It's not supposed to make you question your worth. It's supposed to remind you of it. But here lies the paradox. The more you awaken, the fewer people you meet who can meet you there. Not because love is rare, but because consciousness is. The more you see truth, the harder it becomes to tolerate half-truths. The more you honor your energy, the less available you are for those who take it lightly. The more you embody peace, the more foreign chaos begins to feel. And so, you walk alone, not in bitterness, but in sacred protection of your own energy. You begin to recognize that solitude is not the absence of love, it's the incubation of it. It's where you learn to be whole without being held. It's where you learn that your heart was never broken. It was being restructured to hold a deeper kind of love, one that begins with you. You start to enjoy your own company, not out of avoidance, but out of reverence. You start to see that silence is not loneliness. It's clarity in its purest form. And as you move through this phase, you begin to see relationships not as needs, but as choices. You no longer ask, who will stay? You ask instead, who aligns? You no longer look for someone to complete you. You seek someone who complements your wholeness. You no longer look for a savior, you look for a mirror. Someone who reflects your light back to you, but also challenges the shadows you still carry. This is what conscious love feels like. It's not built on possession, but on presence. It's not about keeping someone, it's about growing alongside them. It's not about control, it's about connection that thrives in freedom. But this kind of love cannot find you until you stop settling for the counterfeit versions of it. It will not appear while you are still chasing validation from people who only love the parts of you that perform. It arrives when you finally become the embodiment of what you've been seeking. So, the spiritually awake do not find love easily because they no longer operate from lack. They no longer confuse loneliness with longing. They no longer chase, they attract. They no longer beg, they align. And that alignment cannot be forced, rushed, or negotiated. It requires surrender. It requires patience. It requires faith in timing that the human mind cannot comprehend. And while the world calls it isolation, they are not lonely. They are being refined. Every moment of solitude becomes a ceremony of self-reclamation. They learn to dance with their shadows until their fears dissolve into wisdom. They learn to hold space for their own emotions without judgment. They learn that love is not a reward for being good enough. It's a reflection of the energy you carry. This is why when the right person does appear, it feels different. There's no chaos, no anxiety, no guessing. There's peace, there's resonance. There's the quiet recognition of, I remember you. He, not because you've met before, but because your souls speak the same language. Because this time, you're meeting from fullness, not from fracture. Because this time, you're not looking for someone to fill a void. You're inviting them into a space already whole. And when love comes like this, it doesn't take away your solitude. It honors it. It doesn't ask you to shrink. It encourages your expansion. It doesn't confuse your independence for distance. It respects it as strength. You both know that connection doesn't mean merging until you lose yourselves. It means walking together while still remembering your own rhythm. The spiritually awake understand this truth deeply. Love is not meant to complete you, it's meant to complement your evolution. It's meant to walk beside you as you both return to your highest selves. That is why they do not settle for temporary warmth that burns out in the night. They wait for the flame that doesn't flicker in the wind. But waiting is not passive. It's preparation. It's the sacred stillness that allows your heart to recalibrate after years of misunderstanding what love really was. It's the quiet courage to say, "Day, I would rather walk alone in truth than together in illusion." It's the understanding that divine timing does not delay. It aligns. It's the acceptance that love cannot find you in disguise. It can only recognize you when you stand as your authentic self. And so, you continue to walk. Softly, steadily, faithfully, you trust that love will find you not because you chased it, but because you became it. Because you allowed your heart to heal without closing. Because you chose to remain open, even when life gave you every reason to shut down. Because you understood that to be spiritually awake is not to be invulnerable, it's to be deeply human, yet divinely aware. You are not hard to love. You are just deeply aware of what love truly is, and that kind of awareness will never fit into something shallow. It will never find home in hearts that fear depth. It will never rest in relationships built on performance. It belongs to the kind of love that mirrors the divine itself, patient, gentle, grounded, and eternal. And when it comes, you will know. It will not shout, it will not demand. It will arrive like morning light, soft, steady, certain. It will not rush you, it will recognize you, it will not consume you, it will expand you. And for the first time, you will realize that you were never waiting for love to find you. You were waiting to remember that you are love itself. There comes a moment in every awakened soul's path when you realize that love, peace, and purpose cannot coexist with the noise of pretense. You grow weary of pretending to be smaller than your truth just to be accepted by those who fear their own reflection. You grow tired of the versions of yourself that you created to make others comfortable. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, your soul begins to whisper, "Enough." That word, so soft yet so powerful, marks the beginning of a sacred undoing. You start shedding layers of identity that were never truly yours. You stop dressing your spirit in masks just to belong. You begin to see how much energy was lost in trying to hold together illusions that were already falling apart. There's a strange freedom in that unraveling. It feels both terrifying and holy, like standing naked before your own soul and saying, "I see you now, and I'm not afraid." In this space, love transforms from something you chase into something you become. You stop reaching for it through others and start realizing it as the very essence of your being. You see, love is not an exchange, it is an emanation. It flows most freely when you are aligned, not when you are seeking. When you stop grasping for it, you begin to notice that it was never gone. It was simply buried beneath your need to be validated. And so, you begin to honor the waiting. You begin to trust the pauses. You no longer see the stillness as stagnation. You recognize it as divine timing unfolding in perfect rhythm. What feels delayed is often what's being prepared in ways your eyes cannot yet see. You begin to notice how life rearranges everything the moment you surrender your timeline. Because the truth is, love does not come when you're ready, it comes when you're real. And being real requires courage. It requires the bravery to look at your patterns, your projections, your pain, and choose not to run. You begin to see how your old wounds shape the people you were drawn to, how your unhealed parts sought comfort in chaos because it felt familiar. You start understanding that what you called chemistry was sometimes just trauma recognizing itself. And in that realization, something inside of you shifts. You no longer chase intensity, you begin to crave peace. The spiritually awake reach this point often. They look around and realize that while they are surrounded by people, very few truly see them. They can be in a room full of noise, yet feel an aching stillness inside, because their spirit no longer vibrates on the same frequency of superficiality. They begin to recognize that deep connection cannot exist where truth is absent. And so, they stop forcing conversations that drain their light. They stop watering relationships that cannot meet them in depth. They stop apologizing for needing more than surface-level affection. Because once your consciousness expands, you cannot fit back into what once felt normal. You start craving honesty, not perfection. Substance, not performance. Alignment, not attachment. You start realizing that love is not found through intensity, but through integrity. Through the quiet consistency of someone who is emotionally available, spiritually awake, and energetically aligned. But the road to that realization is not easy. There are days when the loneliness feels heavier than the truth you carry. There are nights when you wonder if you are too much for this world, too deep for its noise, too honest for its games. But those moments are not signs of being broken. They are evidence of being refined. Your soul is simply outgrowing its old shell, learning to inhabit its wholeness without apology. And in that sacred solitude, you learn the art of emotional self-regulation. You stop reacting out of fear and begin responding from awareness. You learn that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain centered within it. You realize that you can love someone deeply and still choose to walk away if peace no longer lives there. You begin to trust your intuition over your attachment. You stop explaining your boundaries to those who benefit from your lack of them. There's an extraordinary calm that follows such awareness, a calm that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. You become rooted like a tree whose strength lies not in resistance, but in its depth. You begin to see that maturity in love is not about holding on tighter, but about letting go gracefully. It's about honoring endings with the same reverence as beginnings, knowing that both are part of the same sacred rhythm of growth. And as you grow into that rhythm, your perception of love evolves once again. You stop seeing love as something that happens between two people. You start recognizing it as the very force that sustains life. It's in the way you breathe, the way you forgive, the way you rise each morning despite the weight of yesterday. Love becomes the quiet language your soul speaks through acts of kindness, compassion, and truth. You begin to see how love lives in the spaces between words, in the pauses of understanding, in the gentle acknowledgement of another soul's pain. It's no longer about finding someone to make you happy. It's about becoming the kind of presence that creates peace. You realize that love doesn't start when two people meet. It starts when two souls recognize themselves in one another. And that recognition cannot be forced. It happens naturally, like the tide returning to the shore. When two awakened souls meet, there is no need for games or proving. There's simply resonance, a deep knowing that feels like remembering. It's not about fireworks, it's about frequency. It's not about perfection, it's about presence. It's not about ownership, it's about oneness. This kind of love doesn't demand, it allows. It doesn't rush, it flows. It doesn't cling, it trusts. It doesn't need constant reassurance because it is grounded in awareness, not in fear. It's not a transaction, it's a transformation. It's the merging of two paths that were complete on their own, but now intertwined to amplify one another's light. And yet, even here, even in this elevated form of love, there will be moments of friction. Because true connection doesn't avoid truth, it mirrors it. The awakened heart knows that discomfort is not always a sign of disconnection. Sometimes it's the soul's way of stretching into a higher form of understanding. Love, in its purest form, is not fragile. It is expansive. It challenges, refines, and awakens both souls involved. But that kind of love requires two people equally committed to their own growth. It cannot survive in the presence of fear, control, or avoidance. It demands presence, not perfection. It thrives in transparency, not secrecy. It blooms in honesty, not convenience. And if one heart resists that level of vulnerability, the other will have to decide whether to dim its light or to walk away with grace. And that choice, to walk away when something no longer aligns, is one of the highest forms of love. It's a love that honors truth over attachment, freedom over possession, evolution over comfort. It's the recognition that endings are not failures, they are sacred transitions. They are the soul's way of saying, this chapter taught you what it needed to. Now, let's turn the page. And as you do, as you let go with open hands instead of clenched fists, you begin to feel something profound. A lightness that was always waiting beneath your grief. You begin to sense that life was never punishing you by taking people away. It was making room for alignment, for peace, for clarity. You start to see that rejection was not redirection, it was protection. In this understanding, you finally come home to yourself. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer plead, you pray. You no longer prove, you simply are. And that being becomes your greatest power. Because when you are rooted in truth, you no longer fear loss. You understand that nothing real can ever be lost. Love doesn't die, it only changes form. You begin to love differently, not for possession, but for participation. You love like sunlight, freely, generously, without demand. You give because giving is your nature, not your negotiation. You no longer withhold affection out of fear. You pour it because it flows through you, not from you. You understand that love cannot be owned. It can only be experienced moment by sacred moment. And that is where the journey leads, to the realization that love was never meant to be found in another person, but within the awareness that animates you. Every connection, every heartbreak, every silence was preparing you to embody this truth, that you are not searching for love. You are remembering that you are it. So when love comes again, and it will not come to save you. It will not come to fill a void. It will come because your energy called it forth. It will recognize you in your wholeness, not your wounds. It will meet you in your calm, not your chaos. And when that happens, you will understand why none of the others could stay, because they were never meant to meet the version of you that you are now. And so you smile. A quiet, knowing smile. Because finally, you see the beauty in every ending, the grace in every pause, the divinity in every delay. You understand that love was never about finding another half, it was about becoming whole. And from that wholeness, everything you were meant to experience begins to find its way to you, effortlessly, naturally, divinely. Not because you chased it, not because you deserved it, but because you finally became the energy of it. because you finally remembered that love has always been your true nature, your home, your beginning, and your return. In the end, love is not something to be chased, but something to be remembered. It has always lived within you, quietly waiting beneath the noise of desire, beneath the illusions of need, beneath the wounds of yesterday. The journey was never about finding someone to complete you. It was about awakening to the truth that you were never incomplete. When you finally stop searching outwardly, you begin to notice how the universe starts arranging everything inwardly. You see how the silence you once resented becomes sacred, how the loneliness you once feared becomes luminous. You realize that love was never lost, it was simply evolving, calling you higher, deeper, truer. The spiritually awake are not without love, they are immersed in it. Every breath, every moment, every lesson becomes a reflection of divine connection. They do not love to escape loneliness, they love as an act of wholeness. They do not cling, they flow. They do not demand, they embody. And so when real love finally arrives, it does not come to rescue them, it comes to join them. It doesn't come to fill their emptiness, it comes to dance with their fullness. It meets them where they already are, rooted, peaceful, awake. That's the quiet secret of the awakened heart. Love doesn't find you when you go searching for it. Love finds you when you become it.